साल हुए यहाँ?
Good evening. मेरे 4-5 साल हो गया.
In 1985, Mind Your Language came back for a secret fourth season. 13 episodes were filmed at a college to save money. But today, only one episode survives. The other 12 are gone forever. When the production company went bankrupt, creditors took the master tapes and they vanished during liquidation. Historians believe those lost episodes were the most controversial of all, pushed further than anything that got the show canceled in 1979. What was in those missing episodes, and why did everyone involved refuse to talk about them? In 1976, a writer named Vince Powell came up with an idea for a new TV show. He had already worked on another controversial comedy called Love Thy Neighbor. One day, he walked into a pitch meeting with Michael Grade, who was in charge of picking shows at London Weekend Television. That meeting lasted only 30 minutes, but it changed everything. Vince didn't base the idea on any real English teaching experience. He simply thought it would be funny to show a class full of foreign students trying to learn English. Michael Grade was already looking for something that could grab attention. Britain's TV scene back then was desperate for bold ideas, and shows with racial jokes were doing well. So when Vince suggested a series about immigrants and accents, Grade said yes without hesitation. He wasn't thinking about education. He was thinking about ratings. The timing wasn't accidental either. Britain in 1977 was going through major immigration changes. Thousands of Asians had arrived from Uganda in 1972. More people kept coming from India, Pakistan, and other places. The National Front was rising in popularity, and newspapers were filled with stories of racial violence. Despite all that, or maybe because of it, Grade and his team thought people might actually enjoy a show that made light of these tensions. They believed that if the characters were funny enough, even the most stereotypical jokes would be accepted. They expected 18 million people might watch each week, and they were right. The first version of the pilot episode was different from what people eventually saw on screen. It was soft and realistic. The jokes were based on real language problems. The misunderstandings were true to life, but test audiences didn't laugh. They said it felt boring. So Grade told Vince to go back and change everything. He wanted stronger accents, more obvious costumes, and bigger cultural mistakes. Every student in the class had to become a walking version of their nationality. That meant the Sikh and Pakistani characters would argue in every scene. The Chinese student had to mention Chairman Mao again and again. Everyone had to look different and sound exaggerated. The original version was completely thrown out. No one ever saw it again. Even though Vince had worked on racially charged comedies before, he didn't want to make the characters into jokes. He had studied real ESL classes. He wanted to show that immigrants were real people with real dreams. His original idea had depth. Giovanni was supposed to be a serious chef, trying to learn business English. Ranjit wanted to get ahead in his transport job. Suli worked at an embassy and cared about politics. But that version never made it to TV. Grade told him flat out, "Nice characters don't get ratings." Vince needed the money, so he gave in. The only thing he kept was the kind and fair English teacher, Mr. Jeremy Brown. He hoped it would balance the show's stereotypes. Even the grammar lessons were slowly taken out. The show became all about confusion, accents, and fast laughs. A big part of the show's design came from another British program called Till Death Us Do Part. That show had a loud, racist main character named Alf Garnett. He would say shocking things on TV, but people kept watching. Michael Grade had his team study exactly which parts of that show got the most attention. They found out that racial tension made people tune in. So he told Vince to copy that feeling, but hide it behind the classroom setting. It wasn't random. Some of the jokes in Mind Your Language were almost taken word for word from Till Death Us Do Part. The only difference was that now the racism came wrapped in lessons and accents. Years later, in 1985, Michael Grade admitted it had been irresponsible. He even said the show should never have aired. When the actors were picked, most of them weren't even from the countries they played. George Cameller, born in Surrey, England, pretended to be Giovanni, a loud Italian chef. He even made up a full Italian name, Giovanni Vincenzo Marco Dino Alberto Leonardo, and fooled audiences for 42 episodes from 1977 to 1986. Robert Ya-Fu Lee, born in Tianjin, China, played Taro Nagazumi, a Japanese businessman. He had gone to Cambridge and knew a lot about Asian cultures. Still, he was Chinese, not Japanese, but the show assumed no one would notice. He stayed on the show for 29 episodes and died in 1986, at age 73. Kevork Malikyan was another surprise. Born in Turkey to Armenian parents, he played a Greek shipping worker named Maximilian Papandreous. He trained for priesthood in Istanbul, then moved to London to study acting. The fake Greek accent became his trademark. Dino Shafiq, born in Dhaka in 1930, wasn't Pakistani either. He was Bangladeshi. But he wore the Jinnah cap and spoke lines as if he were from Pakistan. He died in London in 1984, just 11 days before turning 54. The show had a habit of blending nationalities as if they were all the same. South Asian countries were treated like interchangeable parts of one big joke. Only 2 actors matched their characters' backgrounds. Jamila Massey really was Indian-born and played an Indian housewife. Anna Bergman, who played the Swedish student Ingrid, was actually Swedish. Out of 10 to 12 main characters, only 2 were authentic. Casting directors didn't seem to care. They just wanted someone who could do an accent. When Mind Your Language aired on December 30th, 1977, it instantly grabbed attention. Over 12 million people tuned in right from the first episode. It was filmed before a live audience at South Bank Television Center. The story was simple, Jeremy Brown teaching English to a group of foreign students, but people loved it. Even with BBC shows airing at the same time, ITV dominated the Friday night slot. By 1978, the show wasn't just a hit in the UK. It had become ITV's most exported sitcom. It was sold to countries like Pakistan, Australia, India, Kenya, Singapore, Malaysia, and even South Africa, right after the Actors Union boycott ended. It aired in Canada until 1982 and in parts of the US by 1985. It was easy to understand, full of clear setups and punchlines, and fit into almost any culture where people were trying to learn English. In total, the show reached more than 25 countries and earned millions from international deals. At its peak, over 18 million people in the UK were watching the show every week. That was almost 1/3 of the country. The viewership never dropped below 12 million. It ran for 3 seasons from 1977 to 1979, with 29 episodes and a Christmas special. Every Friday night, people watched Jeremy Brown's class fall into chaos again and again. The jokes became catchphrases. People repeated them at home, at work, and in schoolyards. It wasn't just a show, it was a cultural event. Because of its popularity, other countries started making their own versions. At least 11 different countries created local remakes. Some used the exact format, just replacing the students with locals. Others translated the scripts. Broadcasters paid big money to license the format. The classroom concept worked everywhere. It was simple, familiar, and funny, even if it came from stereotypes. Many of these remakes became successful in their own countries, spreading the show's influence far beyond Britain. The merchandising that followed was massive. Books, phrase guides, and English learning materials were sold using the characters. People could buy workbooks with Giovanni's jokes, or Ali's misunderstandings printed beside vocabulary tips. There were even soundtrack albums with the best scenes from the show. Fans collected posters, joke items, and classroom-themed gear. The show managed to blur the line between learning and laughing. Even years after it ended in 1979, people still bought Mind Your Language materials in the 1980s and 1990s. Barry Evans never expected the success of Mind Your Language to bring so much discomfort. When the first season aired in 1977, it was already pushing boundaries. But by 1978, when the second season was being filmed, Barry started feeling something deeper. The show had pulled in 18.5 million viewers, but that just made the problem worse for him. He often turned to director Stuart Allen and quietly asked, "Is this too much?" He wasn't talking about the jokes being weak. He was worried they were going too far, crossing lines, painting accents too thick, and turning real people into punchlines. Albert Moses, who played Ranjit, later said Barry struggled with these moments. He hated delivering lines that felt off. Sometimes he just refused. They had to reshoot scenes because Barry didn't want to hurt anyone. Years later, in 1988, he admitted the role had typecast him. It blocked him from better chances. Near the end of his life, he rarely mentioned the show, and to close friends, he confessed he regretted doing it. Behind the scenes, the writers weren't having an easy time either. At the South Bank studios of London Weekend Television, arguments filled the writers' room. Creator Vince Powell, along with writers like Harry Driver, couldn't agree on how far to go. Pakistani character Ali Nadam and Indian character Ranjit Singh were at the center of most of those fights. Some wanted to tone things down, while others pushed harder. The debates ran hours long. Some writers even threatened to quit. Things hit a boiling point when the Campaign Against Racism in the Media called the show out in their 1978 report. The team made some changes, removing a few of the harsher jokes. But the tension never faded. Powell reportedly thought about ending the series just to escape the constant battle. And then there were the production shortcuts. Because of the tight budget, just $15,000 per episode, they rushed everything. 2 episodes had to be shot every week, with only 1 day of rehearsal. Mistakes happened constantly. The classroom door changed numbers from Season 2 to Season 3, and nobody fixed it. In one episode, Giovanni suddenly spoke with a Spanish accent instead of Italian. Ricardo Montes, the actor, was just too tired, and they let it slide. The editor counted at least 47 continuity errors across the series, including names being mispronounced from one scene to the next. Stuart Allen admitted they aired about 20% of the footage, even when they knew it had problems. There just wasn't time or money to fix it. To make those exaggerated accents sound believable, they hired dialect coaches, spending $2,500 per episode. Françoise Pascal trained 8 hours a week to sound overly Bavarian. Ricardo Montes got help from Italian voice experts who actually told him to speak in over-the-top ways. Albert Moses, even though born in Britain, had to learn how to fake a heavy Indian accent from Punjabi coaches. Pixen Lim worked with Mandarin specialists to sound more broken than natural. The total cost for accent coaching was over $35,000, and by the end, some actors struggled to return to their real voices after shooting. Viewer complaints started pouring in, 2,047 in the first 2 seasons alone. But LWT executives brushed them off. Michael Grade, the network's controller, called them oversensitive. Letters from The Guardian and The Times criticized the show's portrayal of foreign characters. Big brands like Unilever and Procter & Gamble began to worry and threatened to pull ads. That's when LWT finally gave in. But even then, they only made a quiet statement saying they'd review content standards while doing secret audience research that showed 73% of viewers still liked the racial humor. one episode changed everything. The 1979 Christmas special, called What's in a Name, crossed a serious line. During a class discussion, Ali insulted Ranjit's turban and Sikh identity. Ranjit fired back with harsh words about Ali's name and religion. It was no longer just comedy. It reminded people of real-life violence between Sikhs and Muslims during the partition of India. For many South Asian families watching in Britain, it hit too close to home. ITV got more than 300 complaints within hours. Even groups who had once defended the show turned against it. The Commission for Racial Equality filed formal complaints. The backlash was so bad that ITV quietly edited out the entire scene from future reruns. Some countries dubbed over it, others kept it. But most people who watched later reruns never even knew it existed. Behind closed doors, the network had enough. Internal memos from LWT revealed that Michael Grade called the show a relic. He didn't want this kind of comedy anymore. In early 1980, they decided not to bring it back. The last episode aired in January 1980. One more episode was filmed but never aired. The show ended not because of ratings, but because the world around it was changing. But that wasn't quite the end. In 1985, an independent company called Try Films tried to bring it back. They didn't have big studio money, so they shot it at Uxbridge Technical College to save costs. It aired only in some regions and never reached others like Thames, Yorkshire, or Ulster. Barry Evans came back as the only original cast member. The rest of the students were new faces. 13 episodes were made, but today only one, Episode 4, 50 Years On, can be found. The others are lost, not digitized, not aired again, just gone. Why? When TRI Films went bankrupt, all their assets, including the master tapes, were taken by creditors. No backups existed. The tapes were likely destroyed or lost forever during liquidation. And just like that, most of Season 4 vanished from history. Even Barry Evans didn't want to return at first. He was 42 then, and wanted more say in how his character was written. He asked for higher pay. The negotiations dragged on, and the tension on set got worse. But TRI Films needed him. He was the face everyone remembered. Eventually he agreed, but by then, the stress had already hurt the production. Historians say those missing episodes pushed things even further than the ones that got the show cancelled in 1979. Experts like Dr. Brett Mills and Professor Sarita Malik believe the lost episodes were the most controversial of all. Maybe it was a blessing they disappeared. Barry Evans's life after the show turned heartbreaking. Once a rising star from the Doctor series and British films, he was out of work by the mid-1980s. In 1982, he had a small role in Legacy of Murder, and by the 1990s, he had become a taxi driver in Rugby. He once wrote to the network, simply saying, "I'm still alive." That's how far things had fallen. He also carried a secret. He had always been seen as a heartthrob. But close friends later said Barry was bisexual. He had a deep crush on Lionel Blair, but never said anything publicly. To protect his image, he dated actress Judy Geeson. The media called him a loner, never knowing what he was truly going through. Hiding his sexuality, dealing with rejection, and watching his career fade took a toll on his mental health. Then came the final night. On February 8, 1997, Barry called police to report his taxi stolen. At 5 a.m. the next morning, he called a friend and asked him to call back. But when the friend did, the line was dead. Police found Barry's body on the floor of his home later that day. His phone lines had been cut. His credit cards were missing. There was a head injury. Beside him were aspirin tablets with a price tag from before 1971, half a bottle of whiskey, and a handwritten will. His blood alcohol level was 4 times the legal limit, but there was no aspirin in his system. An 18-year-old man was arrested after being found with Barry's taxi. He said he visited Barry that night and left at 3 a.m. Barry had been upset, drunk. But in January 1998, charges were dropped. Another young man was later charged with stealing from Barry's home, but nothing came of it either. No convictions, no answers. The police said the evidence wasn't enough. The case was left open but unsolved. When researchers started digging into Mind Your Language, they didn't expect what they found. University experts from several countries studied the show closely and realized something strange. Almost 80% of the language mistakes in the series were completely fake. Errors that real students learning English would never actually make. They looked at hundreds of scenes and found that most of the jokes were built on problems that didn't follow any known patterns of second language learning. Tak Juan, the Spanish character. The show had him confusing feet, fate, and fet. But in reality, Spanish speakers don't confuse sounds like that because their native vowels are too clear and consistent. Other characters mixed up language patterns in ways that couldn't possibly happen. Professors said these mistakes didn't just break the rules. They ignored how real learners progress step by step. They weren't natural errors. They were made up only to get a laugh. Things got worse when linguists broke the jokes down into categories. They found 27 types of fake errors, each one carefully designed to look funny, but not true. One example was how Chinese characters always swapped R and L, even in places where real Chinese learners would have no issue. And there were 69 moments where characters made mixed-up errors that don't even happen in real life, like combining memory loss with language trouble. They even counted 50 examples where someone used the wrong word in a way that had no connection to their native language. It was all written for laughs, not for truth. Real teachers began to speak out. ESL teachers said the show created wrong ideas about how people learn English. Some reported that after the show became popular, their students were treated more like jokes than real learners. TESOL, the biggest organization for English teachers, said the show was spreading 4 big lies. That just being around English helps you learn it, that everyone learns it the same way, that teaching methods for native speakers work for foreign students too, and that body language is enough to teach. In a survey, 71% of ESL teachers said their classrooms were hurt after the show aired. Students were being mocked, support was dropping, the damage was real. Even worse, students started changing themselves to avoid being laughed at. A study showed that learners from India and Pakistan were now avoiding asking questions in class because they didn't want to be compared to characters like Ali or Ranjit. They weren't learning faster. They were holding themselves back. In some schools, these students were 33% more likely to face negative reactions than classmates from countries not shown in the series. Teachers had grown less patient. Jokes had turned into judgment. Because of all this, universities now use Mind Your Language as a warning. Professor David Johnson has been teaching it for over 15 years, showing how the show turned real language learning into a comedy based on old colonial thinking. Instead of focusing on real challenges, the show turned people from other countries into clowns. Experts said the producers ignored decades of research that already existed back then. Today, the show is used in classrooms to prove how badly TV can shape public opinion, and how it still affects ESL policies. When the show aired in 1977, it reached over 18 million viewers in Britain. But when it was broadcast in other countries like Pakistan, India, Kenya, Malaysia, Nigeria, and Singapore, they didn't accept it as is. Broadcasters there started cutting out the worst scenes. These edits removed jokes seen as racist or unfair. Michael Grade, who approved the show back then, later said in 1985 that airing it was really irresponsible. he shut it down. In fact, the BBC's 1979 documentary, It Ain't Half Racist, Mum directly attacked one episode where an Asian man was shown living on government help with two families in one room, and laughing about it. That scene was labeled simply appalling. India even made two versions of the show. The most famous one, Zaban Sambhal Ke, flipped the script. It had Indian characters as teachers, with foreign students trying to learn Hindi. Pankaj Kapoor played the lead from 1993 to 1998, covering 106 episodes. The show had similar jokes, but from an Indian point of view. There was a short reboot in 2018 with only 3 episodes, including a Hollywood actress and an oil-rich Arab character. Even though it was ironic, the idea was still the same. Laugh at people who don't understand the language. America tried too, but it didn't go well. Their version, What a Country, ran for just 26 episodes from September 1986 to May 1987. It had a Ukrainian comedian as the teacher, and characters like a Russian taxi driver and a Pakistani student. They hoped to cash in on the same kind of comedy. Even Don Knotts joined the cast later, but American viewers weren't buying it. Critics called it tone-deaf. It ended after 1 season. Malaysia created a show called Oh My English in 2012, but it ran into problems too. The show was built around the same idea, students trying to learn English. But several episodes were banned because of religious issues. Anything that hinted at ghosts, other religions, or controversial topics got cut. The show did continue for multiple seasons, but not without pushback. Streaming services have also responded, just more quietly. They removed the most controversial episodes of Mind Your Language without telling anyone. Series 4, which aired in 1985-86, was never released on DVD or any platform. Even the 2003 DVD box set avoided certain episodes like Kill or Cure and Don't Forget the Driver. Services like Disney Plus and others use the same strategy. Keep the show available but quietly erase the worst parts so nobody complains. Still, it left a mark. Cultural critics say the show taught people to laugh at accents, habits, and skin colors every week. Families sat together and laughed at stereotypes. That's how racism got normalized. Not through hate, but through jokes. Characters like Sue Lee, who obsessed over communism, and Jamila Ranja, who always wore a sari and looked lost, weren't just funny. They planted ideas in viewers' minds. That this is what foreigners look like. That they don't fit in. Even Michael Grade later admitted it should never have been aired. In 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, protests exploded across the world. People looked again at shows from the past. British platforms pulled comedies that had blackface or racist jokes. Mind Your Language was brought up again. People on Reddit and social media said they finally understood how damaging the show really was. Some said it had shaped the way they saw immigrants for years without realizing it. The campaign against racism in the media had already warned about it decades ago. But now, people were finally listening. By 2021, new studies showed how deep the damage went. The structure of the show always put a white Englishman at the center and made everyone else look clueless. The jokes depended on showing foreigners as dumb, messy, or strange. Every punchline made someone who wasn't British seem like they didn't belong. The more you watched, the more you laughed, and the more those ideas stuck. Experts called it othering, a way of turning people into outsiders. Modern advocates now say this kind of comedy didn't just cause harm, it made racism feel acceptable.